Okay, welcome back. Let's go ahead and do part 2 here. And we're going to start with example number 3. Now in this example, we've got the two triangles that overlap. We've got the smaller one, and then we also have this bigger one, and we have parallel lines. Now what I'm going to do to make this a little bit more obvious when we match them up, let's draw these separately. So we've got 4x and y. Now for the big one,
Mr. Gazepis to the office. Mr. Gazepis to the office, please.
okay, pardon that announcement. So now for the bigger one here, the bottom is 20. Now the left side, this whole thing, we got 4 for the small one, and then this 6 here, this is a piece. This is not the side of the triangle. The side is this whole thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add the pieces. 4 plus 6, which is 10. So this is 10. Now for the big triangle, or I'm sorry, for the right side, this is y, this is 9, and if I add those up, it's y plus 9. So that's how I'm going to set it up. Okay, now, when we do the proportions here, if you want x first, so the x, first of all, we know these angles are congruent because of the parallel lines. These are the corresponding angles. They're always congruent when lines are parallel. X goes with 20. Okay, I always compare one of the sides from this triangle to one of the sides from the other triangle. So x over 20 equals. Now I need a fraction with numbers. I don't want to put the y's here. So x goes with 20. Notice that 4 goes with 10. So that's how I'll set it up. And when I cross multiply, I get 10x equals 80. Divide by 10, x equals 8. All right, now for the y's, I'll do it the same way. I'll start with this triangle, the smaller triangle. I'm going to put y on top. Let me set this up here. So y on top. That corresponds to y plus 9 equals, I'm going to use 4 and 10 again. So there's 4 and there's 10. Okay, now in this one you have to be careful here. When you cross multiply, so we're going to do 10 times y. All right, I'll put it here. 10y equals, now this is 4 times, not 9, this is 4 times y plus 9. 4 parentheses y plus 9. Okay, now that didn't come out so well, but let me do this. 10y equals, I have to distribute. The 4 is going to multiply both of these numbers. So this is 4y, and then 4 times 9, 4y plus 36. Okay, so the question is, how do we solve that? Well, let's subtract 4y. Let's bring that over to the left side. So we get 6y equals 36. I'm going to come over here. So 6y equals 36, divide by 6, and we get y equals 6. All right, so we got x equals 8, we have y equals 6. The key to this is you have to be consistent when you set up your proportions, and then just be careful with the algebra. Okay, so now flip this over. I'm going to give you a couple more examples. There's actually a shortcut to this problem, and I'm going to show it to you. One other rule, and this is a really nice rule, is that when you have parallel lines, okay, so I'm going to draw 3 parallel lines, and then I'm going to, here, let me make them parallel, and I'm going to draw 2 other transversals, okay, that cut through both of these lines. Now what happens is that when the transversal hits the parallel lines, it creates parts. I'm going to name that part A. This one is B, this one is C, and this one is D. And we have a nice rule that says when the lines are parallel, parallel lines implies the parts are proportional. Parts proportional. And what that means is that I can say A over B, those 2 parts would be proportional to C over D. Now there's actually a lot of ways that I could write this, so this is good. If I put B on top, if I say B over A, then I could say equals d over c. Those would be proportional. And notice that if I cross multiply, I do a times d, and I do b times c. Over here is still a times d, and that's equal to b times c. So even though the order is different, it's still the same proportion. You could do a over c equals b over d. That's also good. One more that I'll write down here, I could do a over this whole thing is a plus b. That would be equal to c over this whole thing would be c plus d. So there's a ton of ways to do this. If you do it differently from me, but you get the same answer, then that means you're probably right. Okay, so for example here, I'll give you a couple more examples. Here's number 4. Let's say that we have this situation. We'll say that all these lines are parallel, and I'll go x, 8, 15, 10. And what you could say here, again, there's a lot of ways to do this. You could go x over 8 equals 15 over 10. Cross multiply, you got 10x equals 8 times 15 is 120. Remember that when you cross multiply, there's an equal sign between these. This is an equation that you're solving. Divide by 10, x is 12. Okay, that's it. That's all we're doing here. Now, the last example I'll give you is actually the one that we just did. Here's example number 5. But I'm just going to copy the one that we just did on the front. So this was 4 and 6. This was number 3. And then this is y and 9. And then this is x, and the bottom was 20. Okay. So this is actually number 3. When we found the y, we had to do quite a bit. We had to do y plus 9 for the whole thing, and we had to do 4 over 10. But now, notice that you have parallel lines. When the lines are parallel, notice that when this segment x here hits the big triangle, it breaks this into parts. The parts are 4 and 6, and the other parts are y and 9. Those are proportional. So I would do 6 times y equals 36, and then I divide by 6, y is 6. Now that's a lot easier. What you had to do before, you had to do 4 over 10 equals y over y plus 9. Now you get the same answer, but there's more work involved. Okay, so you can use the parallel lines. Where you do have to be careful though, when I'm trying to find the x, 4 and 6 are parts of the big triangle. Y and 9 are parts of the big triangle. X is not a part. X is a side of the small one, and 20 is a side of the big one. So these are sides. If I try to say that's 4 over 6, if I make this 6, it's no good, because 6 is not a side. So I can do 4 over the whole thing, which is 10. That's how I would need to set that up. So you do have to be careful. The parts are proportional, but I can't put the sides and the parts together. Okay? And that's the end of the notes.